I still remember the night everything changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of night that creeps into your memory and settles there forever, like a quiet shadow that refuses to leave. If someone had told me back then that a simple knock on my door would unravel truths buried for years, I wouldn't have believed it. But life has its own strange way of revealing what we least expect, especially when we think everything is finally calm. Before I begin, let me say this from my heart: if you enjoy heartfelt stories about real families, quiet sacrifices, and the hidden strength we carry inside us, I would be grateful if you subscribed. May warmth, peace, and good health always surround you and your home. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Maria Inés Carvalho, and I'm 40 years old. Born and raised near Porto, Portugal, in a small coastal town where the air always smelled of the sea, and where people believed family was everything. I used to believe that too, until the day my sister walked into my house with her newborn son cradled in her tired arms. That moment, though gentle and beautiful on the surface, was the beginning of a truth so heavy it nearly split our family in half. I had just returned from my job at the local community library. It was early evening, the sun had dipped, but the sky still glowed faintly. I remember placing my keys on the table, taking a breath of relief after a long day, and hearing a soft knock. When I opened the door, I saw my younger sister, Katerina, standing there. Her eyes were puffy, her hair messy, her arms shaking slightly as she held her baby close to her chest. "Maria, can we stay here tonight?" she whispered. I didn't ask questions. I simply stepped aside and let her in. Katerina had always been the fragile one between us, beautiful, sensitive, full of dreams but easily broken by life's weight. She was only 32 but looked older in that moment, as if fear had carved lines across her face. The baby, tiny and peaceful, slept against her shoulder. His little fists were curled, his breath soft and rhythmic. I felt something warm bloom inside me just seeing him. Babies have that magic, don't they? They remind us that even in chaos, innocence still exists. I prepared a warm meal for her, though she barely touched it. She kept glancing at the window, as if expecting someone to appear in the darkness outside. I wanted to ask what was wrong, why she had come, why her husband, Rui, wasn't with her, but something in her eyes told me this was not the moment for questions. Later, after she finally fell asleep on the couch with her baby resting on her chest, I covered them with a soft blanket. I stood there for a long time, watching them breathe, trying to understand what storm had brought them to my home. I didn't know then that the storm had been building for years. The next morning, I made strong Portuguese coffee and warmed some bread, hoping food would give Katerina strength to speak. She sat at the kitchen table, eyes dull, hands trembling slightly. The baby lay in a basket beside her, occasionally stretching his tiny fingers. "Maria," she started, but her voice broke. "You're safe here," I said gently. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers, a habit she had since childhood. Finally, she whispered, "I left Rui." My heart dropped, not from shock, but from worry. Rui had always been difficult. Charming to others, yes, but I had seen flashes of a darker side. Nothing dramatic, just little things, a sharp tone, a cold disregard, a controlling gesture he masked behind a smile. But I never imagined it had grown this bad. "What happened?" I asked quietly. Katerina didn't look at me. She kept staring at the table, trying to gather her courage. He changed after the baby was born. He barely slept. He barely looked at the baby. He said terrible things when he thought I wasn't listening. And last week, after another argument, he pushed me. Not hard enough to injure me, but hard enough to show me what he could become. My hands tightened around my cup. Hearing it spoken aloud felt like a punch. Violence should never be minimized. A gentle push is still a step towards something worse. "You did the right thing by leaving," I told her. "You protected your child. That takes strength." She finally lifted her eyes to mine, eyes filled with guilt. "I didn't leave for myself, Maria. I left because I found something. Something about Rui. She hesitated, lowering her voice even more. And when I discovered the truth, I knew I had to run. A chill ran down my spine. What truth? But she shook her head. I can't tell you yet. I need time. You wouldn't believe it if you heard it now. Her answer only deepened the unease settling in my chest. I wanted to push her, to demand clarity, but her voice seemed so fragile I couldn't force her. Instead, I simply nodded, offering her patience. Days passed, and Katerina remained silent about the truth she carried. But I noticed things, small behaviors, strange details. She constantly checked her phone but never replied to messages. She jumped at sudden sounds. She avoided mirrors, avoided looking at herself holding the baby. And sometimes, late at night, I heard her crying softly in the bathroom, trying not to wake anyone. I tried to keep life peaceful. I cooked her favorite dishes, told her stories from childhood, played old Portuguese lullabies to soothe the baby. But the atmosphere remained heavy, like a cloud that refused to rain. Then one afternoon, I stepped into my living room and caught Katerina staring at a document on her phone, her face pale, lips trembling. When she noticed me, she quickly locked the screen, but not before I caught a glimpse of a name. A name that froze me. Rui, and someone else. Someone I knew. In that moment, my heartbeat changed. The air felt thinner. Something deep inside me knew this wasn't just a marital problem. This was bigger. Darker. More tangled than I had imagined. I didn't confront her then. But that was the moment I realized. Whatever truth she carried, it was going to change our entire family. And I had no idea just how far the shockwaves would reach. Sometimes a secret doesn't scream. It whispers. It hides in the corners of a person's eyes, in the tremble of their hands, in the moments when their voice fades before finishing a sentence. And standing there in my living room, watching Katerina lock her phone with trembling fingers, I felt that whisper reach me, cold, heavy, and impossible to ignore. For the sake of your heart and curiosity, stay with me. What unfolded next in our quiet home by the Portuguese coast wasn't just a family story, it was a slow-burning truth that demanded to be uncovered, no matter how painful the journey became. After seeing that name, someone I recognized, my mind refused to settle. I tried to pretend everything was normal, but inside, questions piled up like waves ready to crash. Katerina acted as though nothing had happened, but her silence carried a weight that pulled my thoughts deeper into worry. I could sense she was trying to protect me from something, but I also knew secrets have a way of poisoning everything around them. That evening, as I prepared a pot of caldo verde for dinner, I found Katerina standing by the kitchen window, staring into the fading light. The baby slept in a small cradle nearby, soft breaths rising and falling like the tide. Katerina's shoulders were shaking slightly. You don't have to hide from me, I said gently, placing a bowl on the table. She didn't turn. I wish I could tell you, Maria. I really do. Then tell me, I urged, unable to keep the concern from my voice. I'm your sister. Whatever it is, we face it together. She finally turned toward me, eyes glassy with unshed tears. But instead of speaking, she whispered, when the time is right. Those words felt like a door closing. I didn't push her, not yet. But that night, after she went to bed, the unease inside me grew restless. My thoughts circled around the document I'd glimpsed on her phone. Rui's name. Another person's name. Someone familiar. Someone too close. I stayed awake for hours, listening to the soft ticking of the clock, thinking about all the years Katerina had loved Rui, years I once believed were peaceful. Now, I wasn't sure of anything. And uncertainty has a way of wearing you down faster than the truth itself. The next morning, Katerina woke early and left the house to buy diapers. She insisted on going alone, saying she needed a moment of fresh air. I stayed home with the baby, rocking him gently as sunlight filled the living room. He was such a calm child, his tiny fingers curling around mine with trust that pierced my heart. I wondered what kind of future he would have. I wondered what kind of father Rui would turn out to be, if he would even be in the picture at all. As I rocked the baby, my eyes drifted toward Katerina's bag resting on a chair. I'm not proud of what I did next. But worry can push even the most rational person into choices they'd normally avoid. I approached the bag slowly, hesitating. Should I respect her privacy? Or should I protect her from something she was too afraid to face alone? My fingertips brushed the fabric. My heart pounded. And before I could talk myself out of it, I reached inside. I didn't rummage. I simply pulled out the first thing my hand touched, a folded piece of paper, slightly worn at the edges. For a moment, I stared at it, debating. Then I opened it. The breath left my chest. It was a printed clinic report. A DNA test. I read the names again and again, my hands trembling. Rui Oliveira. And then, my heart sank, another name. One I never expected to see beside his. Someone from our family. Someone close enough to tear everything apart. At the bottom of the page were the words that made my knees weaken. Probability of biological relation, 99.8%. I felt dizzy. The living room seemed to tilt. A cold tension wrapped around my spine. I sank onto the sofa, clutching the paper, trying to make sense of what I was reading. My pulse hammered in my ears. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just infidelity. It was something deeper. More devastating. I folded the paper quickly when I heard footsteps outside the door, Katerina returning. I shoved it back in her bag, acting as though nothing had happened. But inside, every emotion collided, anger, confusion, fear, and an overwhelming urge to protect my sister from a truth that was too heavy for one person to carry. When Katerina walked in, her face looked calmer than before. She smiled softly at the baby, her love for him glowing like a small light in a dark room. I watched her, my heart aching. Did everything go well? I asked. Yes, she said, though her eyes flickered with something unspoken. The rest of the day passed quietly, almost too quietly. I kept replaying the document's words in my mind. Should I confront her? Should I wait? Should I pretend I knew nothing? By nightfall, my chest felt tight from keeping the secret. I walked into the small balcony to breathe. The ocean breeze was cool, brushing against my skin, carrying the familiar scent of salt and distant waves. For a moment, I closed my eyes, hoping the wind would steady me. But when I turned back into the house, I saw Katerina standing in the dim hallway, watching me. She wasn't crying this time. She wasn't trembling. Instead, she looked as if she had reached a decision. I know you saw it, she said softly. My breath caught. She stepped closer. I'm not angry. I knew eventually you would find out. I opened my mouth to speak, but she gently raised her hand, asking me for silence. Let me tell you the truth now, she whispered. All of it. Because once you hear it, Maria, nothing in our family will ever be the same. Her voice wavered. But before I say anything, promise me you'll try to stay calm. My heart thudded painfully. I promise. She swallowed hard, her eyes filling with fear and sorrow. The person connected to Rui in that report, the one you saw, it wasn't a stranger. It wasn't someone distant. Her voice cracked. It was someone you love. She took a shaky breath. Maria, the test was about Rui. Anne. She looked straight into my eyes, her next words hanging like a blade above my heart. And the other name on that paper was. She didn't finish. She couldn't. But I felt the truth rising like a storm, ready to break open everything we thought we knew. That was the moment I realized the truth wasn't just going to hurt. It was going to destroy. Katerina's lips trembled as she tried to form the name that would shatter what little stability we still clung to. The hallway light flickered softly above us, casting long shadows across her tired face. The baby's faint breathing echoed from the bedroom, a reminder of innocence in the middle of a storm that was about to break wide open. I steadied myself. Katerina, tell me. For a moment, she closed her eyes as if gathering the strength of a lifetime. When she finally opened them, the pain inside them struck me like a blow. The other name on that paper, it was Joao. My heart stopped. Joao. My Joao. My son. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. The world around me became unbearably still. The sound of the ocean outside seemed to fade away. All I could hear was the pounding of my own pulse, loud and disbelieving. My son? I whispered, my voice cracked and hollow. Why? How? Katerina, what are you saying? She stepped forward but hesitated, as if afraid I might collapse or become someone she didn't recognize. It wasn't an affair, she said quickly, shaking her head in desperation. Please, Maria, listen to me. Rui didn't betray me that way. It's not what you think. But my mind was already unraveling. Images of my son, his childhood, his teenage years, the quiet boy who always kept too much inside, rushed through me like flashes of lightning. Then why, I asked, my voice trembling, why is his name on a DNA report with Rui? Katerina covered her mouth as a sob escaped. Because the test, it wasn't for me. It wasn't about infidelity. It was about the baby. Her words spun around me in a dizzying circle. I clutched the edge of the wall. The baby? She nodded, tears falling freely now. I wasn't sure. The timelines were confusing. I was scared. I didn't know who the father was. And I didn't want to bring a child into the world without knowing the truth. My stomach knotted painfully. Katerina, are you saying? She broke down completely. Maria, your son. Joao, he might be the father. The world tilted again, sharper this time, cutting into my chest. My breath came in short, shaky bursts. No, I whispered. Joao? With you? Katerina, that's not like that, she cried immediately, horrified. Maria, listen to me. Please listen. Joao didn't pursue me. He didn't take advantage of me. It happened during a time when everything in my life was falling apart. Rui and I were barely speaking, and Joao, he was going through his own storm. I sank onto a chair, feeling my age press down on me with unbearable heaviness. Explain, I managed. She wiped her face, trying to steady her voice. It was one night. One mistake. I never should have let it happen. He was drinking. I was crying. We were both broken in different ways. I swear to you, Maria, it wasn't love. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't repeated. But I got pregnant. And I didn't know who the father was. A long, heavy silence filled the air. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying to keep my composure. The room felt too small. Too fragile. Why didn't you come to me? I asked softly. Because, she whispered, I didn't want to destroy you. I knew how much you loved your son. And I knew how much you trusted me. How could I tell you something that would make you look at both of us differently? I felt tears burn at the corners of my eyes. And Rui? I asked. Does he know? She nodded weakly. He found out first. He saw my messages with Joao. He asked for the test. That's when everything fell apart. Her voice cracked. But he doesn't know the result. Not yet. I leaned back, letting the truth settle like cold stones in my chest. A child, caught in a moment neither of them meant. A sister, carrying guilt too heavy for her fragile heart. A son, lost enough to seek comfort in the wrong place. And me, standing in the center of a storm I never saw coming. Slowly, I rose from the chair and walked into the bedroom where the baby slept. His tiny fingers twitched in his dreams, his face peaceful and innocent. Nothing about him carried the weight of the mistakes that brought him into this world. I touched his cheek gently. Katerina stood quietly behind me, watching, waiting, afraid. He's just a child, I whispered. Yes, she said. And none of this is his fault. No. Not at all. I turned to her. Her eyes widened slightly at fear, hope, regret all tangled together. Katerina, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, this truth, it hurts. It hurts in ways I can't even describe. But it doesn't make him any less deserving of love. It doesn't make you any less my sister. She broke into sobs again, falling into my arms, her body trembling with years of hidden pain. I'm so sorry, she cried. Maria, I'm so sorry. I held her tightly, letting my own tears fall. We can't change what happened, I said softly, but we can decide what happens next. She pulled back slightly, searching my face. What do we do? We raise him, I said. Together. And when the time comes, we tell Rui the truth, with honesty, with dignity, and with hope that he chooses love over anger. She nodded, though fear lingered in her eyes. And João? I closed my eyes briefly. My heart ached for my son, for his mistakes, for his loneliness, for the future he would now have to face. I will talk to him, I said. But not with fury. With the heart of a mother who refuses to lose him. Katerina wiped her eyes again, a small breath of relief escaping her. In the quiet that followed, the ocean waves outside resumed their steady rhythm, as if reminding us that life goes on even after storms. I looked at the baby once more, his little chest rising and falling. His name, I whispered, will not be defined by our mistakes. He will grow with love. Not shame. Katerina nodded tearfully. I promise. I placed a hand over hers. And Katerina. I forgive you. For the first time since she'd arrived at my door, her shoulders eased. Hope flickered in her expression, small, fragile, but real. As the night settled around us, I knew our family had been shaken to its core. But we were still standing. Still trying. Still loving. And sometimes, that's enough to begin again. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. It means the world to me.